called code-dependent it's actually an interesting angle on exactly what Tom was talking about, which is how we shape one another, right? It's the codependency of the technologies. And for me to bring that to life, I felt the only way I knew how was to find stories of real ordinary people, not the creators of the technology that we elevate and deify and kind of obsess over, but ordinary people who haven't really thought about what the technology might do to them, but whose lives have been changed and who respond accordingly. So that was kind of my motivation. But I would say I went into it very agnostic. I'm not somebody who I'm not pessimistic as a person, but even in terms of my attitude to technology, I trained previously as a scientist, and I believe in the promise of new science, of scientific development and innovation and what technology can do to better us. And over the last 10 years that I've reported on AI, I have found increasingly that the story has become darker. It started off as this maverick, endeavor to change the world and solve problems, but here we are today, where it's embedded into these consequential parts of our lives, everything from criminal justice to healthcare to, the things that ChatGPT listed, although not all are in my book. But, genuinely changing these, life-changing, like health for example. And so for me, it was about finding those examples and bringing them to life. And so I went in kind of thinking I'll look for both good and bad. But through the reporting of this book, I think what was revealed to me was the sort of dark underbelly of AI in action. I would say it started to sort of come to light very slowly rather than a moment of shock. But what I found is at the end of it was I had written quite a dark book without actually setting out to do so, which really looks at how AI is impacting people today, and more often than not, there were failures and there were harms. And I think for me, maybe the most shocking part of it is how little the builders of the technology and those who implement it know about how it works. There is so little understanding and so much opacity around the workings of the technology, which leads to the harms in action. So one of the stories I focus on is a single mother in Amsterdam whose 2 sons are put on a list compiled by the Amsterdam mayor's office that say that these boys, these children, will go on to commit crimes in the future. So basically Minority Report come to life. This program is still ongoing in Amsterdam. And I spent time with Diana, the mother in this, to really understand how it impacted her and her relationship with her children. And what I found was just this, a huge lack of empathy in even including the people who you're targeting. So set aside whether the system even works to begin with, whether it's biased, 90% of the children on this list were male and came from North Africa. They were immigrants, even though the technology, the algorithm was supposed to be race blind and gender blind. So even setting aside, the most important question of whether it even works was this callousness of, excluding mothers, excluding families and the boys themselves, and sort of instead putting this target on their backs, this punitive scarlet letter that said they would go on to commit crimes in some cases when they had never ever committed a crime before, and one of her boys was 14. So I think for me was the most shocking, that we have already implemented systems into criminal justice, into diagnosing diseases, into giving out public services, all without knowing whether they work and actually even how these systems work at all.